Our world can be a horrible place, but unless you work in law enforcement, it's unlikely you've seen the worst of it. In the most nightmarish situations, police rescuers witness frightening and unusual crime scenes that are sometimes hard to believe. Unfortunately, as you'll see in the following stories of creepy police finds, many cases are real and give you goosebumps. A house full of leaves. In 2011, Ohio police officers entered the home of a 30-year-old man and saw a scene that raised more questions than answers. Matthew Hoffman lived in a house filled with piles of leaves, but that was just the beginning of the story. On a bed of leaves lay a bound 13-year-old girl, the only surviving victim. She was the daughter of Tina Herman and sister of 11-year-old Cody Maynard. They both, as well as family friend Stephanie Sprang, were killed, dismembered, and hidden by Hoffman in hollowed-out trees. A lumberjack by trade, Hoffman piled the house with piles of leaves that were so tall that investigators were afraid to find other bodies there. And while there were no more remains in the house, there were squirrels stored in the refrigerator and bags of leaves nearby, hinting at Hoffman's mental state. Devil of the Park. In 2015, Nicole Dykema was tasered after she resisted arrest for 5 hours and tried to hit a local police officer with a machete. Police were called to Dykema's home when her neighbor Paula Dedford saw her stabbing maniacally at her own house. When police officers entered her trailer, a grim and frightening sight awaited them. Dykema's home turned out to be a collection of 3,500 knives and swords, and the further in, the more strange things the officers found. In addition to the edged weapons that violated Dykema's parole rules, they found a shrine dedicated to Satan and creepy props there. According to another resident, Dorothy Clack, Dykema was a hellish neighbor and was often heard screaming and banging her head against the walls of her mobile home. Cult hike. This story was shared by Reddit user Caleb, who took a call about a disturbance at a cemetery while he was patrolling the area. Caleb and his officer and mentor soon arrived on the scene and saw what appeared to be a cult that was going to dig up some bodies for their ritual. According to the user, the cult members wore ceremonial robes and repeated, "Free them from their worldly prison," referring to the buried corpses. The presence of police officers put an end to the ritual, but it appeared the worst was yet to come. Although Caleb wanted to arrest everyone gathered in the cemetery, an officer began to dissuade him. He said that if an arrest was made, a report would have to be released that would include the names of the police officers. "These people better not recognize your name," Caleb was warned. The lack of details about what the cult might have done to the cop and the creepy action Caleb saw hint that it was something very scary. Or maybe he was just retelling a kinda cool cop story. Oh no, hungry. You should use caution when opening the door to strangers at night. And that's what Reddit user Spartan337 has learned. When his precinct received an emergency call, he had no idea he would soon find himself in a situation reminiscent of a scene from a horror movie. After listening to the caller, Spartan found out that some strange woman had approached the man's house. She was carrying a child-sized horned doll that was covered in a red liquid. She told the alarmed homeowner, "Oh no, hungry," and then pounced on it, screaming as hard as she could. When Spartan arrived on the scene, the woman was already gone, but bloody footprints were left on the door. Later, the woman reappeared in the homeowner's backyard, cowering in the dark, whispering and growling something. She was detained by police, but she started screaming again and even attacked the terrified officers. Turns out she was drugged. But maybe there was a demonic, maddening evil lurking in her madness? The warmth of a mother's love. Tasha Hatcher, 34, of Glenrose, Texas, shocked police and loved ones in March 2016 when a terrible secret was revealed. Hatcher's neighbor called police when the mother showed up at his home with her daughter. Both were naked, and fresh burns on the 2-year-old's body indicated something terrible had happened. But what police didn't even expect to find out was that Hatcher had put her little girl in the oven. When they took her to the police station, she began praying to God and harassing the deputy station chief. An official statement from Family Services found that the methamphetamine in her system affected her behavior. The daughter survived the incident with second and third degree burns over 14% of her body, and for her horrific act, Hatcher went to prison for 20 years. Dry crystals. Prepare vomit bags. This story was told by Reddit user CatAttackJack. Let's call him Jack. In a Queensland suburb in Australia, Jack, a police constable, took a report of a man who was stealing shoes, smashing car windows and throwing plant pots at people. When police arrived, the man started screaming like a madman and banging his head against everything. Eventually they were able to subdue him and Jack searched his house, which was a mess. On the coffee table was a drawer with somewhere around 100 closed bags. Inside them was some organic material and apparently crystals. At first they thought it was drugs, but when the suspect's home was inspected by canines, they found out something that made everyone uneasy. The canine officer stated that the resident of the home was suffering from golden staph, a skin infection, and was picking his own pods. As it turned out, the man was picking at the infection on his leg and spreading out the pods from small to large. Presumably, he was eating it all. And things got even worse when it turned out that the crystals were actually dried mucus from his nose. How's your stomach? Is it okay? Try telling that story at dinner. Queen of the toilet throne. It's happened to everyone when, after a bad food combination, it seems like it's never going to make it out of the bathroom. But in 2008, Ness County Sheriff Brian Whipple encountered a situation where a man was literally chained to a chair. He arrived at the home after the man was called in because of his girlfriend's strange behavior. The 35-year-old woman had been sitting on the toilet for 2 years, and her skin had even started to form around the stool. Although the woman refused medical attention, the rescuers convinced her that she needed to be examined. She agreed, and Whipple, along with the rescuers, began unhooking her from the toilet, so she could be taken to the hospital to have the ingrown stool removed. According to her boyfriend, he brought this toilet queen food and water, and asked her to leave every day, and she replied maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow never came until she was forcibly removed from there on September 27, 2008. The tragedy of the apartment monster. This story about a detective in an unnamed city was told by a Reddit user, and it may strike you to the core. According to the author, emergency services received a call about a monster who was trying to get into someone's apartment. The caller claimed to hear a gunshot, and then something started pounding desperately on his door. Upon opening it, the tenant saw a nightmarish monster trying to enter his apartment. After fighting off the strange creature, the caller heard screaming in the hallway, as if the monster was terrorizing someone else. After several more calls, police officers arrived on the scene, including the detective who told the story. When he arrived on the scene, what he saw was worse than any monster. There was indeed a horrible creature roaming around the apartment complex, except it was actually a man living there. He unsuccessfully attempted suicide with a shotgun, but didn't die, just ripped off his jaw and part of his nose. In a state of shock, he walked around the house, hoping that one of the neighbors would help him. However, the answer to his frantic pleas for help was only frightened screams and slammed doors, when the neighbor saw his mutilated face. Children in Woodland Hills. On February 3, 1982, the Martin Freight Company impounded a container belonging to Melvin Weisberg, an operator of medical analytical laboratories in Santa Monica. When company officials opened the container the next day, they found something unimaginable inside. Inside were nearly 500 fruits stored in formaldehyde, but the horror didn't end there. During the investigation, police searched Weisberg's home. By February 24, they found 2,000 aborted fetuses, more than 300 of them in his garage. By May, the number had risen significantly to 16,431, 193 of which were in their 20th week of development. Weisberg said he kept the fetuses because he couldn't allow them to be cremated or buried. Surprisingly, he received no punishment for this. In May '85, 16,000 aborted fetuses were solemnly honored at Live Oak Memorial Park in Monrovia, California. A granite headstone is all that remains of this discovery. There are monsters living among us, and one of those monsters is named Joseph Fritzl. To understand what happened, we need to go back to 1984, when Fritzl, an electrician, Rosemary's husband and Elizabeth's father, called his 18-year-old daughter into the renovated basement to help install a door. Elizabeth didn't realize she was helping finish the dungeon, in which she would have to live for a full 24 years. After installing the door, Joseph locked his daughter in the basement, and she remained there for more than 2 decades. Joseph convinced his wife that Elizabeth had run away to join the cult. However, he knew the truth and tortured his daughter in the most horrific ways and later even became the father of her 7 children. In 2008, when one of the children became seriously ill and needed hospitalization, Elizabeth broke free and told the police her fate. She led investigators to the basement where she lived with the 3 surviving children. 3 more of them were living upstairs with Elizabeth's parents, as Joseph assured his wife that his daughter had planted them, being unable to care for the children because of her commitments in an imaginary cult. When police officers arrived at Fritz's house, they found a large basement. There was a workshop that contained a hidden entrance to other rooms. Behind the workshop were 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a living room and an ominous soundproofed room. Often these cases are more frightening than the bloody and violent stories. What do you think? Do these incidents give you goosebumps? Tell us in the comments below the video. Thanks for watching.